10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to Freethought in Florida. This is a new test of some new broadcast software here, so stick with us. We've got some kinks to work out and try to get everything going good. So thank you for those of you who are tuning in. Freethought in Florida is a production of the Atheist community of Polk County. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. I am Sarah Ray. I'm one of the directors of the ACPC and a host of Freethought in Florida. And today is January 15th, 2021. Now, I did mention on the last program that we are going to be bringing in some new voices, some different folks throughout the landscape to get some different perspectives and talk about some things that are going on statewide here. So today we have a couple of folks joining us. I have Deborah Smith and Devin Graham, and we're going to bring them on here. And I'll just, you know what, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. Deborah, do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi. Sarah, thank you very much for having me on the show. I appreciate it. And I am looking forward to today's conversation. It should be good.
Awesome.
I don't know what else to tell you. Your description said legal junkie. I have other things that I jones about. Let me tell you. But yeah, I have an interest in things legal. That's certainly true.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Do you want to mention like any involvement that you have in the secular atheist community?
I don't have anything particular to add, honestly. I'm a member of the Central Florida Freethought, and the last thing that I was involved with would have been probably Free Flow, because it wasn't that long after that we wound up locking everything down and going to our bolt holes for the pandemic. So there we are.
Awesome. Devin?
Hi, I'm Devin Graham. I'm the Assistant State Director for American Atheists. I'm located here in Tallahassee. I'm also the current president for the Humanists of Tallahassee group. And I'm a scientist by trade, I guess. I have no background or experience in politics or legal matters, but I really like it. So I've become more involved in the past year, so that's where I'm coming from.
All right. For those of you watching me, like listening to my phone in one ear and the show in the other, we are having some audio glitches already here. So I'm poking around with the settings and trying to get that fixed for those of you who are watching the feed. So we'll, yeah, probably. We'll just blame you. That's all right. So anyway, yes, this is all new software, and we're going to have to figure it out as we go here. But generally here, we gathered today to sort of talk about some legislation that's coming down the pipe here in Florida. And there is sort of a history to this state and our love of the blurring of the church-state line. And so we're going to talk about some specific legislation in a moment, but first we want to sort of just talk about the religious landscape, the secular landscape here in the state of Florida, and then what we're doing as community organizations and with American Atheists to sort of address some of the more problematic legislation that we see, but also to support the stuff that we're seeing that you know we feel needs to be supported. So, Devin, do you want to start then and just sort of introduce the state of the secular states report that the American Atheists does and sort of what that tells us?
Yeah, so this is maybe the second or third year in a row that they've sent this report out. So this is based on the 2020 data that we have. And it's pretty much a report saying how each state is faring in terms of their protections for religious equality or religious freedom, whether they have anything in place legislatively or legally, or whether they don't. And as far as how Florida goes, well, I should say that they classify them into three different classifications. The blue, which has protections in place for people of all religions. Yellow, which is kind of meh both ways. And the red, which for states that have very few protections in place for religious minorities or the non-religious and whatnot. And Florida, no surprise, is red.
Sorry, I'm still working on the audio thing. Jump in.
That's okay. I was going to add just a few preliminary thoughts that I had, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Great. One of the things that people joke about is saying, elections have consequences, and obviously they do. And one of the things that occurred in Florida in the 2018 midterm elections were on the ballot. There were various amendments, and the court determined that it was acceptable to do amendment bundling, which was really awful. It's like saying, I want to vote for having orange juice, and I'm going to couple that with we're not going to allow dogs in Florida, and you can't pull them apart. You're voting for both. You're voting yes or no on both. And they did this. They coupled Marcy's Law along with extending the term of the Florida State Supreme Court justices, as well as changing what I think is a judicial outlook or a matter of jurisprudence, and that Florida judges are no longer required to take agency directives as guidelines. They could say, well, the agency that runs this, they think they know what the answer is, but we've got a better one. And both of those things are ungood, because now we have our judges served till age 75. And the other problem is that I believe what we have done is our own little version of just on a state level trying to destroy what at the Supreme Court level would be the Chevron deference. Do you think am I correct on that, Devin?
I'm going to say sure. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know for sure. But yeah, it's, in a way, Florida kind of just runs rogue, I guess. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing from the top down. Let's say it that way. In terms of
it's
run rogue.
It's not good. And truly, I remember losing my cookies in 2018 and thinking nobody's going to get this till like 2021, 2022, and they're going to see how much damage this has done.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm sorry. So
we reap what we sow, I guess. So
we do indeed.
But yeah. But you can see the data that we have for Florida on the atheist.org website. I think it's states.atheist.org. And you can look at each of the states, their scorecards. And while Florida does do decently in terms of like constitutional and non-discrimination protections, when it comes to our youth and minority, like LGBTQ plus people protections and healthcare, we're not the best. And we also have a lot of exemptions for religious groups. So that's why we kind of fail on this report card. So, but I don't know, do we want to go into the action teams, Sarah?
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so kind of to counter this, so I'm going to be the American atheist cheerleader here. So the past few years, I've been working with American Atheists for just almost 2 years now. It's almost my anniversary. They've been really aggressive in promoting grassroots advocacy from their state directors. And especially in terms of like supporting local and state legislative agendas, and gathering, like getting volunteers and advocates to work on these types of campaigns. But it's really diluted what they can do at a national level. And so they've piloted this initiative this past year. I think the name is fine. We've been going back and forth about the name, but it's probably going to be the State Legislative Action Teams, or SLATs. And they're piloting this in a couple states. So Florida's one of them. Oklahoma and Virginia are two others. There may be more coming down the pike, but pretty much what we have are we're gathering groups of volunteers across the state. So I'm a chair. Sarah is the co-chair of the Florida group. So we got the two bigwigs here. And
Right.
so while we're starting, we're gathering volunteers from across the state. We're assembling our team right now, and we're trying to get people who are interested in either legislative work or advocacy to kind of we're going to train people, and we're going to get the resources that we can from American Atheist, and we're going to be supporting secular legislative agendas and whatnot. So it's exciting. So some of the other teams have already started because their legislative session has begun. Now they started now, but we still have a little bit of time before we start ours. So.
And one of the things that I would mention too is that honestly, since I got involved in secular activism, and it hasn't been that long, but there really hasn't been a coordinated response to this sort of legislation, right? What we saw with Project Blitz, when Project Blitz hit and that story broke, there really was no coordinated response to it. It took, I want to say it was 2 or 3 years before all of the national organizations came together to write that letter, the combined letter, right? And it was American Atheists and the American Humanist Association and Atheists United and all of these different groups to say, hey, we're opposed to this, and this is what's actually going on with it. And so I feel like, in general, that we just haven't had our cats herded together to respond to this sort of stuff that's happening. And so what's exciting for me is that now we're getting the cats herded. Now we're starting to really put teams together who can watchdog this stuff and work up, responses and show up at the Capitol and speak on these particular issues and that sort of thing, like to really coordinate the effort, because here's an action alert, go click the button to send an email to your congressperson goes so far. And then this is just sort of another like layer on top of that of the grassroots in the weeds getting in and actually addressing some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're finally putting together our cat rodeo. So
yeah,
well, I think one of the things that I don't know that it caused a delay in herding our cats, but it certainly complicated it, was that we have some recent Supreme Court decisions that have come down, and those paved the way for what states are going to try to do or not do. And I know that between the decision in the Trinity Lutheran, the Supreme Court decision with the Bladensburg Cross, we're all just like, oh, well, great. Let's just get rid of that line between church and state entirely and just, not care. And it when you see it happening, you're almost feeling like, I cannot believe they're actually doing this. This goes against all precedent, and yet it's happening anyway. And I think that made it that much more urgent that, geez, what else are we going to lose if we don't start advocating?
No, you're right. And a lot of, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, but we're going to go through some of the bills that we're expecting to go through this session. And a lot of them are in direct response to some of the decisions like Bostock and Espinoza. So both good and bad. Yep. So, but yeah, we'll get down. We'll get to those in a little bit.
So yeah, so on the advocacy team, what sort of things do we expect? What's sort of the first priorities? Obviously, we're just really now just forming and getting people rallied around and selecting people to engage in this team. What is the ask then? What are we asking people to do? What are we hoping to accomplish as a team? That sort of thing.
I mean, ideally, I think we should focus on a couple key bills that are, religiously motivated and or are positive, that are promoting something that we are fans of, that are promoting our progressive social justice, looking forward bills. And it would be great if we could have a concerted response across the state. So getting volunteers from across the state to actually not just send an email, but get involved in contacting their legislators, their reps and their senators, and hearing from their constituents. Because if they don't hear from constituents and they just hear from the idiot from American Atheist who shows up to testify every time, then it doesn't have that much of a pool for them to go one way or the other. But I think if they hear from their constituents and people who are placed strategically in areas throughout the state, I think that will help significantly. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah.
Do you have, Devin? Do you have advocacy groups already set up in most of the counties in Florida? Are there lots of counties that have no coverage?
Oh yeah.
How are you?
So as far as the team that we're putting together, I mean, Florida's a big state. It's huge. We've been choosing people that are spaced out fairly well. That some are involved in groups already, that like local humanist or atheist groups, and some aren't, which I think is an advantage as well. It's a way to get them involved in, strengthening those groups that maybe don't have like a advocacy or activism background. So we are choosing people that are spread out, and I think we're gonna learn along the way. This is an experiment.
It is. It's a pilot program, really. I mean, the idea is that other states are going to also have programs like these, and we'll kind of do best key learnings and stuff and put all that together. But yeah, the idea is to really just figure out what works. I mean, this is really the way the opposition works. This game is let's buckshot some stuff out into the universe and see what sticks. And oh, look at that! The "In God We Trust" on our public schools bill, those seem to be catching on. People seem to be passing those. So let's copy and paste that into Kentucky and Tennessee and see how many states we can get that passed in. And that sort of tests the waters for, I mean, this was Project Blitz's entire purpose. Their entire way of functioning was just to see what they could get to go through and then move it around the country and try to get it in as many places as possible and then tweak it here and there. And so really that's, I see, that's a good battle plan, really, to, it's test and adjust.
Exactly.
Really, just to see what works and what doesn't, and share that with the teams across the other states.
We're going to have fun with this. We're going to have fun.
Yeah. I'm going to fly up and do some testifying with you.
Okay.
That's what I'm going to drive up. I'm not going to fly up. Nobody's flying.
It's going to be bizarre this year. I'm just telling you. It's already going to be weird.
Okay, so before we go on then, you have done this in-person advocating and testifying at the Capitol here in Florida. And I know we've talked about that on previous shows, but do you want to give us a Reader's Digest rundown of that?
Yeah, so I'm not a native Floridian, so I didn't understand how the whole process worked. And so when I started testifying last year against the mandatory moment of silence bills, I had no idea what I was doing. And so I learned a lot along the way, and I have what I would call some really awesome mentors who are who have kind of taught me the ropes. And so the legislative process in Florida is specifically meant to not be understood by the normal person. Like it's just meant to be convoluted. So each session every year, we have a yearly session, it's 60 continuous days. In odd number years, which is 2021, it starts in March, like the first Tuesday after the first Monday, something like that. And even years, it starts in January. And as far as like the makeup of the Senate and the House, there are 40 senators, and that's like a 24-16 blue to red. Red to blue. We are really Democrats are really in the minority in the state. But in terms of the House, there's 120 representatives, 78 are Republican, 42 are Democrats. We actually, while we saw a big blue wave nationally, Florida actually saw a red wave. We lost a lot of progressive stalwarts this past year, which is really sad. But any representative or senator can file bills even before the election if they're not up for election, up until the first day. Citizens can't file bills in the state. It has to be done by a representative. All bills go through like 3 committees usually beforehand, and these are determined by the majority party. So if they really like you, maybe they'll only have your bill go through 2 committees. If they really hate you, there's been bills that have had to go through 7 committees before it got to the chambers. And then finally, both chambers have to vote on a bill to become a law. So that was my little Schoolhouse Rocks thing. We're doing committee weeks. So before the session starts, we have about 5 or 6 committee weeks. COVID's kind of messed this up, but we are finishing up the first of these committee weeks. And these are kind of planning sessions, but there's also committees that are meeting, and they're voting on some of these bills. So anything that happens during the regular session can happen during these committee weeks, except that the full chambers cannot meet. That's the only difference. And yeah, they've put in some really crazy rules this past year. The House majority has, at least. There's going to be less debate time on a lot of bills in the House, which is interesting, which is kind of how the Democrats have killed a lot of bills, by debating them to death. And that's been kind of minimized this past year. So it kind of sucks for us. But
Indeed.
Yeah, so that's my little synopsis of the legislative process. And as far as testifying, anyone can go in and testify. I'll talk a little bit later maybe about how to go about this now because of COVID. There's a big lockdown, and they're not letting people in at all. But yeah.
Glory, glory, hallelujah, you guys, I figured it out. We just can't talk at the same time, but I figured it out.
It's a miracle.
Oh, God. Okay. Whew. All right. So.
Never mind.
Okay, so go ahead, Deborah.
Devin, I have a question with the with the COVID pandemic that has hit this year. Have you seen that has led to a larger desire for more conservative bills, or at least a more conservative attitude? Because one of the things that has happened is that organized religion sort of came front and center, where you have this push-pull between, hey, as long as you can have under 12 people or 10 people and keep 6 feet apart and everyone wear a mask, go for it. And then your churches, we're not going to do that. And that got translated into, they're attacking our right to worship. And it's like, no, we're kind of attacking the right of someone's parent or grandparent to not be killed by the person who catches COVID from their neighbor in your church. Have you seen an impact on that within the people you speak with in Tallahassee?
In a way, yes. So there's always conservative bills, that skew to the right, that there's just a ton of them, and and like Sarah said, they do like a gunshot type approach. They just throw everything against the wall. As far as the bills that are going through now, from the conservative side, they do tend to have more religious protections. And I'll talk about one of those, about protections from COVID liability for COVID cases, I guess. But a lot of the bills that we're seeing are more in response to other events that have gone on this past year, such as the Black Lives Matter protests, the police, the defund the police movement, things like that. So I've seen more bills that are going after those type of things, more social things, whereas I see a lot of from the left, from the Democrat side, I see more stuff going towards like helping our unemployment system here in Florida is total crap. So like helping the unemployment system, moratoriums on eviction or whatever, things that are actually helping people, and not so much going after these ideas like free speech, things like that. So I would say that I don't think it's that much different than any other year. It's just the context is different.
Okay.
But as far as like what I mentioned earlier that a lot of this stuff is in response to some of the Supreme Court decisions, and in response to a lot of the bills that almost made it last year. So we're seeing a lot. We are seeing, like, in terms of Bostock, which was the in the employment arena, gender and gender identity are now protected classes. We are seeing some religious exemptions. They're trying to push those through. Parental consent was something that went through last year, which is requiring parents to be involved. For a minor must inform their parents if they're going to have an abortion, have to have parental permission. Judicial bypass is still in place, but it's now kind of a mandatory thing. But what we know from experience is that most minors that do have an abortion, they already talk to their parents about it. Parental rights was something that I'll talk about later, but that was something that almost made it through last year. It went through the House, but not the Senate, and they brought that back up again this year. So yeah.
One of the bills that I mean, again, you can go back to the process, but that I haven't seen come through is our old friend, Demon Buster Daniels, who is no longer filing garbage legislation because she's no longer in the House. The last big one that I fought against was the teaching. It would have been a mandatory elective class studying the Bible in our high schools, in all public schools in the state of Florida.
Yeah.
Was a thing that I used to, that was the last big thing that I fought against.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't seen that filed yet.
I haven't seen it filed yet either. It was filed last year. I think it died. I don't think it made it to committee. I don't think it just kind of sat there, but I haven't seen it filed yet. So that's good. They don't have, I don't see them having like a demon buster or like a really hardcore evangelist type representative that we've seen in the past, like with Kimberly Daniels from Jacksonville or Mike Hill from Pensacola. They're both out of office this year, which is great. But we don't have that the firebrand Christian now, which I'm okay with.
So do we want to start getting into some of the legislation that's hanging out there?
Absolutely.
The stuff that's already been filed. And we can talk about your pile of notes. So you have these sort of divided up into some categories, and so we'll go through that. But the sort of the framework here is what's been filed that we're watching, and then there's a classification within that of, is this something that we think is going to move forward? And that's, I mean, it's hard to guess, but we can kind of look at the makeup of the House and the Senate and extrapolate some guesses out of that. But definitely there are some major impact legislation that we're going to focus on, because they have such a big impact on the people whom they will impact, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right.
So the first category is that I've picked out, and this is as of Thursday, January 14th. Things get filed constantly, so this may have changed overnight. I just haven't really looked back on it. So the first category is kind of like outright religious legislation, or those that have religious exemptions, like obvious religious exemptions. So the first one is Senate 72, House Bill 7. And this is kind of what you were talking about, Deborah, about the liability it's COVID related. So it's like minimizing liability as a result of the COVID pandemic. So what it is, and it's focused on big business, is what they're saying. Small business, but it's actually like larger business entities like Publix and whatnot, and how these entities will be protected from lawsuits if an employee, say, gets COVID from working there. There is, however, an exception for religious institutions. They can also be protected from they won't be liable if their parishioners get COVID, which is interesting because they have been kind of allowed to do what they want. They didn't have to follow the restrictions, the social distancing, I don't know, most places couldn't have more than 20 people in the building. They were allowed to, or at least if they did, it wasn't reported, or they didn't get in trouble for it. So there is an exemption for religious institutions in that bill, and that's concerning. Another one, which is the same one that I fought against last year, and it's in Senate 282. It's the mandatory moment of silence. Luckily, so far, there's not a House version of this, which is great. But this is kind of, so in the statutes of Florida, I hate that I know this, but statute 1003.45. I hate that I know that, but it allows for children are allowed to have in public schools are allowed to have a moment of silence, and schools can offer a Bible class, and that's fine. So what they want to do is make this moment of silence mandatory. And the way the bill is written, which is kind of the same as it was last year, is that there's very few guidelines, and it's up to the parents to talk to their children about how to deal with this, and the teachers can't interfere. But we've seen, for instance, like in West Virginia, where there was an optional moment of silence or something. There's something like that in West Virginia a few years back, where a non-religious child was like just bullied so much for not participating. And like we've seen this happening before, and so obviously that needs to go down. But it was put through committee. It has been assigned at least 3 committees, so it's going to go through for now.
Out of curiosity, with this moment of silence idea, my understanding is one of the ways they try to make this more palatable to say this is not teacher led. This is just your kid can sit there and think about, robots or Jesus or Buddha or whatever they want. But usually there's something in there that allows children to sort of say, but I want to join hands in prayer with the people around me, which creates an incredibly exclusionary environment.
Absolutely.
And it sets up a religious precedent. Is that something that would happen within this bill, where students are free to sort of form little packs of, we're the Pentecostal people, and and if you're not, well, you should be.
There will be a religious civil war breaking out in the third grade classroom. And that's the thing, and that's the way this bill is written, is that there are no guidelines whatsoever. It's not like you have to sit at your desk and do this. There aren't specific guidelines. It's vague for a reason, so that we can have the Pentecostal corner and the Catholic corner and whatnot. So it's bothersome to me personally.
Yeah, this one struck me as one of those that, again, like, the way it's written is very vague, and it's very much, like, hey, this is already in the statutes. And so on one hand, I could think, all right, well, it's kind of already there. Why are we messing with it, really? But then also like that it's not teacher led. It's not specifically prayer. It's just a, okay, kids, let's take a few minutes to reflect on however you want to reflect. And so they would expect minimal opposition to that because it seems like it is so unintrusive.
It does. And I think this is something that I struggled with when I was first getting into this. I'm like,
why do I care as an atheist?
Yes.
This doesn't seem to be a big deal.
It doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but I kind of view it as a gateway legislation into something that's a little more devious.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah. So once this goes through,
and the real question is, what purpose does this serve within the educational system?
Right. Exactly. It doesn't.
I mean, if what we want, if one wanted to take a non-religious aspect and say, well, we think there should be this moment of silence so that kids can be centered and mindful. It's like, they can do that themselves. Most kids can. They don't need time, specific time set for that. School is about education. That's sort of the point of it. And I don't know how this fits into that theory. I really don't.
I couldn't. If I had another 5 minutes, I could probably look up the quote of the exact legislator. But like someone has addressed that. Was it Baxley that said like I thought it was one of ours in Polk, and it might have been also. But boy, life is just so difficult for kids right now, and there's so much stress out in the world. And wouldn't it just be great if we had an opportunity to let kids just kind of calm, to what you just said, Deborah, calm and center themselves? And
that's my boy Baxley. Yeah, he did that while he was staring me directly in the eye. Like, why can't we just give kids a moment to relax? And I'm like,
hey, give them some more fucking recess. How about that? Let's actually give them their time back.
Oh, this takes away like 2 days of schooling total. Like if you
add it all up together. We lost Devin again. We'll get her back.
I've lost everybody. I've got a green screen in front of me.
Did I go? Was I gone?
You disappeared.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're back.
I'm back.
Am I there?
Hey.
Am I there?
So scared.
Yeah. I got everybody.
Oh, okay, good. That's Sarah. That is just as an aside, and not to interrupt Devin. My apologies. This is a real irritant that I have, is that we don't have recess in schools. We don't. There isn't recess. There isn't time for recess.
Our kids. So we have a 5-year-old and a 10-year-old, and they're at home learning right now. But the 10-year-old gets literally 30 minutes for lunch. And by the time you travel from classroom to cafeteria to get your food, to sit down, to actually eat, and then have to go back to the classroom, that's 15 or 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And there's so many things on the educational front that I'm, as a parent, I'm just furious about. So we don't need all of this other stuff on top of it, I guess.
No, we don't. We literally don't need another X amount of minutes taken away from
instructional time or
instruction time in an already absolutely massively cram-packed curricula where
we got to get ready for the tests and all of that.
I'm sorry, my apologies.
It's fine, but that was filed in the Senate, nothing in the House yet.
Okay,
so that's good, but it is moving through. And then as far as like my last bill that's outright religious, and I don't know if it's necessarily outright religious, but this was filed last year and didn't go anywhere, but it's Senate 498, House 259. And this is just allowing guns in churches. If you have a concealed carry permit, you are allowed to take your gun into church unless the church has something posted.
Yeah, see, this is what I found weird because I often say Florida and Texas are in competition for 49th and 50th, right? And Texas seems to be, I mean, if anybody's taking guns into churches, it's Texas. But like, what happened to, hey, it's their property, they can do whatever they want? Like, can't the church just allow guns if they want and not if they don't want? What happened to like that? Oh, freedoms.
Yeah, there's a stipulation if the church has a sign that says, no, you can't do it. But come on. I don't know. It's not necessarily outright religious, but I don't know why there's dual bills going through, wasting our time and their legislators' time.
Right. Like, I need to know, what is the current state, right? Is the current state, it's up to the church? Because that seems like what we're doing here anyway, but they have to post a sign. Okay.
Yeah.
Or is it the current state that guns are not allowed in churches and we want to allow them in some cases? Or, like, there's background needed on this. But also, like, I'm not going to go into a church, so I don't really. It doesn't really bother me.
For me.
Yeah, right.
But that's as far as like the religious ones. Those are the main. Those are the big three, I guess. And so next, I want to go into a big hot topic this year is the educational related bills and what's going on with our students. And so there are some god-awful horrible ones. The one that was just filed is Senate 410. The title of it is called Materials Harmful to Minors. And I love it. I love it so much. And so what this is trying to do is make Florida an opt-in for sex ed. So there are 3 or 4 states right now that are opt-in for sex ed. So if you want your child to take sex ed, you have to send in a written permission slip that says they're allowed to go to sex ed. And that's Utah, North Carolina, and Mississippi.
That's a great company to be in. That's great.
In Nevada. And so what this is doing is forcing is going to make Florida, instead of an opt-out, an opt-in state. And I was on another call earlier today, and there's some really bizarre language in here, like anything that's harmful or obscene. Now, in the context of schools, there's a stipulation that says breastfeeding could be harmful. So if you have a book that has a picture of a woman breastfeeding, that's considered obscene or harmful, and that they can't be exposed to that. So it boggles the mind.
I know.
Yeah,
it does. And there are so many things that are distressing about this. It's a cornucopia of distress is truly what it is. And when I read through that, and when you put that on the document, then I pulled it, read through everything, I thought to myself, well, are we going to have opt-in for, whether your child can study, lungs or their pancreas or their circulatory system?
Yes.
Because
there's another bill
how did reproductive systems and genitalia become the we don't talk about down there? It's like it all it does is contribute to a really messed up culture about
you weren't raised evangelical, obviously.
About body functions. and we want to protect. Do we want to pretend? Do we want to pull out like an old-fashioned Barbie doll and a Ken doll where no one has any junk at all, and say, yes, this is what we expect people to look like under there? Well, they don't.
Right.
And as part of remaining a healthy human being, you should understand how your body works, all of your body. And this is it's distressing. It sets up an opportunity for ignorance is what it is. It's an opportunity for ignorance. And we have so many state legislators that want to plan many different ways to outlaw abortion, but knowledge isn't one of them. And that's unfortunate, because if you look at states where they have good sex ed programs, their abortion rates are so much lower.
Yep.
So what do they, I don't know what they want. I mean, what they want is they want ignorant kids to pretend to abstain who won't, and will walk away with roomfuls of teenage motherhood. And that's,
and all of the other consequences that come with it. Like,
so
let me add, last year I was invited to speak at the Polk Teen Pregnancy Prevention Association's, it's Polk, Highlands, and Hardy counties. They do a faith leader event. And so the atheist trans woman was invited last year to be a part of their panel, and it was me and Heather Norby from the UU and someone from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and then someone who was from a Southern Baptist, I believe, church. And it was so interesting because as these questions come up and we go down the line, right? My answer, I was on the end, so I went first, and it was me, Heather, then the Mormons, and so it was very much, hey, I think we should just teach kids things and trust them that they'll be able to figure out how to be responsible with the information that we give them, like we do every other thing that we teach them. And yes, to your point, all of the data show that if we provide this knowledge to our young people, that it decreases all of those metrics that we're looking at, teen pregnancy, abortion, STI, STD transmission rates, all of those quote unquote negative factors, outcomes are decreased when you provide comprehensive sex education in public schools. That's just a demonstrable fact. And so now I will be on that panel again in about a month. It's February 11th, I think. And I'm going to be talking specifically about some of these bills that are looking at, allowing parents to object to questionable material, right? And that sort of thing. And so I'm going to have to, I'm making the case to the faith community here that you should be on the side of providing comprehensive sex education in our public schools that is diverse. You need to talk about gender identities and sexual orientations. We have to talk about it because they exist. And then on Sunday, if you want to talk about, well, for your soul, for your heavenly spirit, for your whatever, this is what the Lord asks of you. I'm okay with that. If we can come together on the public policy piece of like, let's just provide them the information, and then you can add the faith component to that in your own time and place, then I think we're in an agreement. So that's sort of been my approach to it. I don't know how successful that's been or going to be, but that's where I'm at.
Yeah. No, what you raise is a point that causes me so much frustration, because faith communities should support this, because it demonstrably reduces teen pregnancy. It demonstrably reduces, STIs. It is better to have knowledge. If no one teaches you that the stove is hot, you won't know to not put your hand there. How about we teach you the stove is hot? How about we teach you how to use the stove properly?
Right.
How about that?
Right.
Let's do that. And you know what? Most people who know how to use the stove properly generally don't burn themselves.
Yep.
That's a rule.
Exactly.
Who does? Children. Children who don't know how to use the stove properly will burn themselves. It's the same thing, and knowledge is not a bad thing. And we,
but also in what we just said there, would we rather have our children learning this information from qualified, certified educators who we know what the curriculum is, we know what they're teaching, and that they are qualified to teach a thing, or from their buddy? Because if you don't teach it in school, trust me, they learn it, but they're not going to be learning it from necessarily a trustable source. No. And that's where they're going to get misinformation about you can wash a condom out and reuse it again, or some crazy bullshit like that, right? Like,
well, and this is also a thing that is, I don't want to say unique to Southern states, but I'm originally from the Chicago area, and I try to explain things to friends and family who believe that they have like common ground with the evangelicals. And I'm like, but you don't. You think you do, but you really don't. And because the way things are looked at can be really different. I went to Catholic school for 16 years, and I was taught sex ed in grammar school. I was taught sex ed in high school. I had an excellent understanding of how bodies work. I could have sketched it out for anybody. In terms of any moral ideas, that was kind of left to my parents to hand to me or not, as they chose to do.
Right.
But I was not ignorant. And so what you have is, you have Northerners who will hear, well, the Southerners are the Southern state is arguing that they want sex ed, and they're imagining in their head some kind of really weird, wacky thing because this is a given up there. So they're thinking, well, what more do they want? I mean, do they want to like watch people practice in class? I mean, it's like, no, we just want to talk about how bodies work. And it's definitely a Southern thing. And boy, that's a struggle.
Yeah, well, I think the solutions to this sort of problem, I mean, this is one where the grassroots really hits the road, to mix metaphors, where we need to be getting into to people in the community and having these conversations. What is it that you don't want them to teach? What is it that you're afraid of that they'll learn? What is it that you object to specifically? Like, tell me what the issues are, and let's talk it out. And then, again, if we can find that common ground of if this is, if you can meet me here on the public education piece, and then you add on whatever you need to add on from a faith perspective, that I'm okay with that and you're okay with that. If we can get to that point, then I think we're good. I have been saying for a while now, and this is in the Florida Constitution allows for, is it Constitution, Florida law, allows for the school districts to choose the curriculum of its sex education, which means that there's a patchwork, probably not. It's probably more just don't do it all over the state of Florida, but that leaves a patchwork of this district teaches this and this district doesn't. Here in Polk, we call it comprehensive, but it's not. And so at some point, we're going to have to get the allies together and go to the school board meeting and say, hey, we need to talk about this. And here's why we should be teaching a comprehensive, equality, inclusive sex education in our schools. And what do we need to do to get it there? Wouldn't it be great if we could bring some leaders from the faith community with us into that conversation?
Yeah.
Anyway, we're way off track here.
How are we on time? Like what?
I'm good. If you guys are good to go long, I'm good to go long.
I can go on forever.
I'm fine.
Oh, great. Me too.
Okay,
I fixed the audio. Let's just keep talking.
We're the never-ending podcast.
There you go.
So the next one is a repeat from last year. It's Senate 582, House 241. It's called the Parental Bill of Rights, or as my friend John Hare said, the Parental Bill of Wrongs. And it's all about they don't want you to be able to infringe on the rights of the parents to control their child. So it's pretty much giving parents access to kind of personal records of their kids. So say you're in a household that it's very restrictive and you're maybe LGBTQ or something, and you want to talk to somebody, you go to the school counselor, you talk to them about it. The parents are now would be allowed to access those records. The school would have to hand those over to the parents, which would probably not fare well for that kid.
Right.
They've taken the education component out of it from last year, I think, but there was also stipulations like if the parent didn't want their child being taught sex ed, which is how they framed it, but if the parent didn't want the Holocaust taught or evolution or something, you can then pull out the child from their science class or anything like that.
And that's bonkers. To go back to Deborah's point earlier about the different, you know, are we going to stop teaching the nervous system because a parent is whatever? Like, oh, we can't teach the Civil War now because there's, you know, some parent that has an objection to it. Like,
Yeah.
what on earth? This you get special exemptions because you believe a thing is, I think, really the maybe the umbrella category for most of the religious legislation that we've seen eroding the church-state line, right? The religious exemptions to do whatever you want despite the law because you're special.
It is. Well, it's more than being special, I believe. And we'll probably get to that if we talk about vaccines at some point, but we have an enormous group of people now who believe that I saw on YouTube, therefore I know.
Yeah.
And again, I'm older than you guys. Growing up, teachers were considered, they were professionals. You know, they taught you what things were, you accepted it. You know, you didn't have parents quarreling with it. I knew of no one growing up who wasn't vaccinated as a child and who didn't vaccinate their children. Now they're all over the place, and for reasons that really don't make any sense, but because they heard it on YouTube, it's a thing now.
Right.
And we do not trust professionals anymore. That's the bottom line. We believe we can be our own professionals. Like when someone says, well, you know, I don't know that I believe that. And where are you getting that information on COVID from? And I'm like, well, I'm getting it from the CDC and Johns Hopkins.
Oh,
where
they don't trust that anymore.
And they're like, well, but no, you should do your own research. I'm like, I'm not a virologist. I'm not an epidemiologist. I kind of look at, you know, medical universities for these answers. We've devolved.
Yeah.
We've devolved and devolved and devolved. And now we want to choose everything cafeteria style and have no overarching concept of we need an educated people in our state and in our country. I'm sorry, I'll get off the soapbox now.
Yeah. But as far as the other bad educational one this year is the free speech one. I mean, speaking to people who don't want their kids hearing things, the Senate 264 and House 230.
Oh, hold on, Devin. You disappeared again.
Okay.
Senate 264, House 233.
Yeah. Okay. I thought I got lost again.
Yeah, you did.
You did.
Oh no.
You're
Okay.
good.
Okay. It was pretty much and there are other ones that relate to social media, but they don't want anyone to hide their children from conservative viewpoints. They want to make sure all viewpoints are being explained or taught, which they already are. Like, facts are already being put into your child's head. How they interpret it is their decision and your decision. So this is one of the governor's big legislative agendas, is making sure everyone has the freedom to hear whatever they want them to hear.
We see how well that worked out for Parler.
Parlay. So yeah, this is actually what DeSantis, told people in Texas last night. Like, this is his big legislative push is going to be on free speech and making sure kids can get taught, see both sides of the story. Which
translates to, okay, now class, we're going to talk about evolution, but we also need to talk about creationism because some people think that's a thing too.
Yeah, science class.
And then do we get to add in flat earthers? That's a thing.
Sure,
that's a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, why not? You know, why not? Why not give that as much status as evolution? Why not? I mean,
yeah.
There were a couple of good ones in here that I want to jump back
really
to
good ones.
that are like,
I'm so happy.
Yeah.
I'm so happy.
One of the first ones that I want to mention that I'm 1,000% in favor of, with one slight modification, is Senate 242, House 75, which provides hygiene products in public schools for free. And if you've been watching the show for any length of time, we had Kathy from, damn it, I'm not going to remember the name of it. I'm so sorry, Kathy. Kathy Dobson and I have talked about this a million times. It's nuts that we don't provide these products in schools. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yep.
And so there are, guys, there are nonprofits who have organized specifically to provide these to schools, and that's nuts. If ever there should be a tax allocation for, like, if our money should go to something good, it's this. My only caveat, which I put in the notes, was, my response back to this will be, yes, we support this, absolutely pass this provision, but change the wording of feminine hygiene products to personal hygiene products or menstrual hygiene products or something that is non-gendered, because you have trans men who still deal with that part of their anatomy and will be needing those products too. And it's super easy just to switch that to say personal hygiene products.
Absolutely.
The end. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I'm gonna kind of group a lot of bills together. I think what I'm gonna do is make a spreadsheet of these so they can be accessed by everyone, and that may be part of what we're doing for our action team. But there's a huge issue. Florida has a history of favoring private schools and charter schools that have mandatory policies. It was a huge issue last year. Like, they got bazillions of dollars to these schools that have no standards whatsoever. They're not being regulated by the state. There's no assessment. Teachers didn't even have a high school diploma in some places. It was insane. And so there's been a whole bevy of bills that are being put forward that say that if private schools want to be eligible for state scholarships and state funding, they need to have non-discriminatory policies. For the qualifications for teachers, there's finally going to be qualifications, and this will apply to both private and public schools, that you at least have to have a bachelor's of some sort. All types of schools, public and private, will have similar assessments. Private schools will need to undergo the statewide testing assessments, just like the public schools do. So I think that's amazing, and I'm very happy about that.
I don't think it'll ever pass.
I don't think it will. But it should. It made me a little happy.
Well, the fact that there is somewhere a legislative priority to raise. I don't know if you saw this morning. The Orlando Sentinel, Scott Maxwell, has been on top of this.
He's good.
He's real good. So he's for the past few years has been publishing articles, like pulling back the curtain on some of these private and religious schools about just the stuff that they're getting away with, and headmasters molesting children, and this school took billions of dollars in voucher money and didn't do this, didn't follow through on this thing that they were supposed to do, like all of that stuff. It's Schools Without Rules. If you want to look it up, Scott Maxwell, Orlando Sentinel. But there was another one that released today with a whole nother batch of schools being bad, and it's a shame that, again, here we are, right? It's, well, they don't have to hire gay people because they're a Christian school, and that's okay. Even if we changed the state law to include sexual orientation and gender identity as part of our anti-discrimination ordinances, they would still be exempted because they have a special religious belief.
Yeah, because they're acting in a ministerial capacity.
Yeah. And there's another one which is in response to what we were talking about with the Parental Bill of Rights, how people can pull their kids out if they don't like certain topics. But Lori Berman, who if she has her name on a bill, you know it's going to be good. So Senate 190, House 105, and there's a couple actually that are a mandatory Holocaust history and African American history, which needs to be taught in private and public schools, which I'm very happy about as well. That needs to be included. So that's kind of in response to those Parental Bill of Rights issues that we were just discussing. But yeah, I I love some of these educational bills. I'm so happy about them, but they're gonna die. They're gonna die in committee if they get that far.
Yeah, for sure. But again, like there is at least a signaling now from part of the legislature that's saying, "Hey, this is an issue that we want to raise," which we have not seen previously. In fact, previously we have seen both sides of the aisle happily working hand in hand to advance voucher bills and extensions and exemptions, and so it's good to see that someone is finally stepping up and saying, okay, enough's enough.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what I have to say about education. I don't know if you want to go on to like my miscellaneous social justice ones. There's so many. There's so many.
Yes.
But I do want to talk about one that has not been filed yet. I just found about it. I think it was just in the Jacksonville paper today. It will be filed within the next week, and it's going to be called the Florida Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, which is a 20-week abortion ban. So that's going to be going through, but like the name alone is disgusting. I'm very angry about this. We thought we would avoid a lot of the abortion bills this year, but apparently not. That's happening. That's happening.
Right.
So we can expect that coming through in the next few weeks. Maybe we should talk about good things first. Should we talk about good?
Sure.
Okay, I just wanted to throw that out there because it hasn't been filed yet.
Good things.
I like good things. We'll end up on the bad last. So
We always.
there are, and on a real downer.
The Deborah Smith story. We always do.
So there's some bills out there that are expanding classifications for hate crimes. So the Senate 194, House 43, which is now going to include gender and gender identity in the hate crimes classification. So that's good. They've also made the language slightly more inclusive by just saying disability instead of like physical or mental,
right,
which I think is important. There's another one in the Senate for I think this is one of Lori Berman's for the office to start the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, which I think is something we desperately need in Florida. There's other resolutions that I think we should be supporting. So this is Senate 244, House 19. There was back in the 60s, there was some legislative investigations into the civil rights in the civil rights era. So there was a lot of investigations into people that participated in like the bus boycotts here in Tallahassee. They were mostly FAMU students, which is an HBCU located here in Tallahassee. And then there were also investigations into professors, I think mostly at UF, who were LGBTQ positive, or they were gay, and they kind of ruined their lives actually. It was kind of like the whole McCarthy lavender scare.
Yep.
So it was like the Florida version of that. So they're reaching out and they want to apologize and recognize that they acknowledge that they did wrong, which I think I'm a huge fan. I think Sarah and I talked about this a little bit, but in light of the Black Lives Matter protest and whatnot, the defund the police movement, there have been a lot of fabulous law enforcement bills going through, and this isn't necessarily like an atheist thing, but I think this is a progressive thing that we need to push. Most of these are put forth by Senator Bracey, who I didn't know of until I was going through his bills, and Senator Farmer also did a lot of these. But so it's interesting. They want to eliminate solitary confinement. They don't want minors undergoing any type of confinement, especially death penalty would be off the table possibly. I need to really go into that bill to get the wording right, but I think they're trying to take the death penalty off the table. Tear gas would be banned. Law enforcement agencies couldn't buy military surplus equipment, which I think is kind of awesome. citizen review boards would be mandatory in most regions, and how police are dealt with following a police-involved shooting would be regulated. So I think those are great bills.
Yeah.
Increases the transparency.
Yeah, especially in light of what we've seen recently. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. There's another resolution that Florida should ratify the ERA, which is what? Yes, we still haven't done that. So someday.
The ERA, we need to pass the Equality Act. I don't see that that's been filed yet either this term.
I didn't see it either.
For God, how many years has it been that we've tried to pass some version of that, and it just
guys, there's also a push to get a lot of the to kind of bury our Confederate past, which I think would be great. So there's a bill in to replace the name of Dixie Highway, which is kind of a major road here in Florida, to make it the Harriet Tubman Highway, make Juneteenth official state holiday, and removing the Confederate holidays off the calendar as official state holidays. So we have a Robert E. Lee Day, we have a Jefferson Davis Day, we have a Confederate Memorial Day still that are on the books. So getting those off the books would be great. And I think most importantly, there's at least 3 bills that are related to this, is that a repeal of DOMA, so the Defense of Marriage Act. So recognizing marriages that aren't just between a man and a woman, recognizing marriages that are performed in other states and countries. I think that's really important to get that finally on the books.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's one of those things that's weird about the way our government is set up, I guess, as a confederation of states.
Confederate.
That's the wrong choice of words. Well, hey, we are in the South, y'all. Is that like, okay, the Supreme Court made its ruling, marriage equality is now the quote, the law of the land, as interpreted by the Supreme Court, and yet, states will carry on for decades with one man and one woman language in their own state constitutions and legislation until we have to file legislation like this to say, hey, we should go in and edit that now. And then we all have to agree to do that. That just seems like it's so much. When people, I think when people talk about waste in the government, there's a great example of that. Now we have to, are we going to debate this on the floor of the House and the Senate, whether or not we're going to recognize this Supreme Court decision and undo the words on the Word document? I don't know. It's a lot.
We need legislative whiteout is what we really need.
There you go.
And just go through it like that. But as you can expect, there were a lot of bad bills put through. And the first, I mentioned the abortion one that has yet to be filed, but the first one I want to go over is filed in the Senate. It's number 266. And this was put through last year and almost made it through. It's called home-based business, which is super innocuous. You wouldn't even give this a second look if it hadn't gotten the attention it had. And so how it reads, it's very vague. It's that if you have a home-based business, then you are exempt from local ordinances, and you can carry on and whatnot. So it sounds like, oh, that's a great idea. Someone runs a little shop, a knick-knack shop out of their house. Let them do that. But what was when they analyzed this bill, it could allow for conversion therapy to take place if it takes place in a home business. So as far as the state doesn't have, there's a lot of preemption laws. Let's say it this way. They're trying to put a lot of preemption laws through at the state level. So many local ordinances in cities and whatnot, local cities have ordinances that say conversion therapy is banned in this county or in this city. But a lot of the state tries to put through a lot of bills that say we preempt this. So it doesn't matter what you say in your little town. If the state says conversion therapy is fine, it's fine. And so this is one of those bills that was, when it was analyzed, it's kind of going after that. Like, so home-based business, while we don't have a state ordinance in place that bans conversion therapy, home-based businesses that are in these towns that do ban conversion therapy, they're not subject to those laws. So last year, the sponsor did they put some language in to alleviate that, but he put the same damn bill through again this year without that language, which makes me think, like, why? Like, this is obviously your intent. This was your intent the entire time. So I think that's one we need to keep an eye out on. I know a lot of like Equality Florida will be watching that one as well.
Right.
But just based on the name and like what the description, it's super innocuous, but it's really not. So that's one I think we should all watch. I think Deborah, you called this the Ayn Rand resolution.
Did you like it? Did you like it?
So stupid. It's like I don't know what it's called, like individual freedom and democracy and I don't know, my guns. One in the Senate version at least says like democratic socialism is bad.
I seem to recall making a comment about that. Yes, I did, didn't I?
But it's pretty much saying that
we're going to have a resolution to say we don't like democratic socialism. The end.
Right. Yes, the end.
Take back your Medicare.
Yeah.
Like your Medicare and your Social Security. Yep. Give it back.
Yeah. So there's a House and a Senate version of that, and it's just dumb. Like there's another one that's like just called Taiwan, and it's just it's like we want to be best friends with Taiwan because China's stupid. It's like, okay, well, I wonder where this is coming from. There's another one in the House like that we're not allowed to use foreign voting machines. Like if a voting machine, if Hugo Chavez touches the voting machine, we can't use it. So it's silly. And pretty much any bill that Sabatini, if you see the name Sabatini on the bill,
he gets around a lot for a dead guy. I gotta say, he gets around a lot for a dead guy.
Yeah.
Hugo
I thought you meant Sabatini. I'm like, he's still alive.
No, I meant Hugo Chavez gets around a lot for a dead guy.
Seriously. But anything that Anthony Sabatini puts through is just going to be bad news bears.
Well, speaking of Sabatini, there were a couple here that I don't think we touched on, and if we did, well, if you guys hit this while I was trying to fix audio problems, tell me and I'll shut up. So Sabatini's House 6003 removes authority of a state health officer to order vaccinations upon declaration of public health emergency, and revises the requirement that DOH accept certain rules. So there's a couple of vaccine things in the hopper here. And that one just seems to like shift authority a little bit as to, who has the power to order vaccinations. So they can be a little more controlled. And then the other one is Senate 364, and this is out of Gruters, prohibiting businesses and governmental entities that require individuals to present driver's licenses and ID cards for specified purposes from taking certain actions on the basis of individuals' vaccination status and proof of immunity from any virus. So again, like this is prohibiting public accommodations from discriminating against you for being an anti-vaxxer, essentially. Yeah. So you can't, as a business, at some point, if we get down to the road where it's like, all right, well, I operate a private daycare, and I'm not going to allow any students into my daycare who haven't had this vaccine. That's a sort of get out of jail free card for that. If you, well, no, I have an exemption again.
Yeah. Do they put? I don't understand the driver's license bit. Are they putting our vaccine status on our driver's license? Is that how this is working?
I don't.
Or am I being marked with the mark of the beast?
The mark
finally?
of the beast.
Oh, so happy.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
Sorry, let me get my pen and I'll do that 666 for you right now.
Awesome. Bring it. But yeah, there's just a lot of just dumb ones, and I'm sure they're gonna just fly through, and it's gonna be grand. But this is Florida, and we are only in the first committee week. We still have until March 2nd, I think. They still have until March 2nd to file bills. And if it's a committee bill, it can be filed up to like the 50th day of session. So there's still so much time to add so much more bad stuff and good stuff. Let's be optimistic.
Yeah, there will be a lot more. That's for sure. Yeah.
So this is going to have to be a continued conversation as far as.
Yes. And let's plan to do that. I mean, if this is a monthly get together and we talk about, here's where we are on the show, so that folks in Florida can follow along. As we move into, I think we're ready to go into the sort of action item component of this. I think, like, as a person who has 2 kids and a job that has garbage, I work overnight, right? To be connected with even your city government, let alone your state or federal government, we have made it as difficult as possible. Thank you, capitalism, right? We have just made it as difficult as possible for people to be involved, to be engaged. And that's why the popularity of the action alert systems, I think, works, because I know you may have time to call and talk to a legislative aide. A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't like phone calls. This is the thing. You can just click the button and it sends an email to all of your legislators, whatever, about a certain issue. Now, what's the efficacy of that? I have often wondered how useful that sort of thing is. I know a lot, like, call your legislator. I have always been under the understanding that it's better to call. If you can't call, email. If you can't, or write a letter, whichever order that was.
Letter than email.
Letter than email. And if you can show up in there make an appointment with them at a local office or whatever, even better, right?
Yes.
But
I think that when push comes, I think that in person is best.
Yeah.
If you can pull that off, that is always best.
Yep.
A person-to-person phone call, always good. A personally written letter as opposed to a form letter,
right?
Always good. But if what you can manage is just sending a text saying, "I don't want you to do this," or "I do want you to vote on this," do that. It's
and my understanding.
They can at least see the opposition they may be facing should they follow through.
Right. My understanding is really, like, even when you just call and say, hey, I see that Senate Bill 1234 is up for whatever, and I want to voice my opinion as your constituent, that I want you to vote against that. Whether you're calling or emailing or whatever you're doing, essentially there's a team of aides that are just tallying. Yes, 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 no, yes, no, no, yes, no. And just to kind of get the pulse of here's what people are feeling about this particular bill or resolution or whatever the idea is. And so my advice too has always been, like, if you're going to call and you're one of these people who, like me, I don't like talking on the phone. There's an anxiety component to that. Like, if you call in the middle of the night, you will get the voicemail, and you can leave a voicemail that says, and I've done this many, many times, hey, this is Sarah. I'm one of your constituents. This is my address. Prove to them that you are a constituent or whatever. And I am calling to urge you to vote no on Bill 1234. Then you can leave that as a message. They'll get it in the morning and add you to the tally. If it's like in that push.
Really excellent. That's a really excellent idea. That really is.
I hate phone calls.
Avoid person-to-person talking at all costs.
And the person on the other end of the phone, the aide doesn't care. Like, this is the other thing you need to understand. They don't care who you are. They don't care. All they're doing is just getting your feedback and kind of copying it down to present, to push together with all of the other calls and feedback they've gotten to present to the legislator to say, hey, this is kind of where people are. If that helps you, if that helps you get through the jitters of making a phone call, remember that.
Absolutely. I think that's really great advice. I truly do. That did not really occur to me. I mean, it makes all the sense in the world. It just didn't really occur to me. Because I'm a daylight hours kind of person. So,
yeah. But as
well
far
done,
as like
Sarah.
what we can do, a lot of these bills, all these bills actually, if you go to is it flsenate.org or myfloridahouse.gov, I guess it's the .gov, sorry.
Yeah.
flsenate.gov, myfloridahouse.gov, you can sign up for the tracker, and you can track both Senate and House at the same time.
Yep.
It doesn't matter. I think the Senate site's easier to deal with personally, but that's just me.
Yeah, that's what I use too, Senate site.
And it's a little, you can get the web page instead of having to download PDF.
There are third-party bill tracker things too. Like if you're someone who wants to keep track of federal legislation too, like I'll find you one. Keep talking.
Yeah, so you can do that. You can track bills. I get updates on a daily basis. It tells me when these bills are going to committee. So if I'm available, I can just run to the Capitol, which COVID changed that a little bit. But it tells you where things are going, what the votes were. It's a really great resource. Florida they done good on that. So I recommend signing up for the tracker. And as far as like what to do, if you are in Tallahassee and you can testify under normal circumstances, I would absolutely say to do it. Even if you show up and just wave what's called, just wave in opposition or wave in
support,
in confirmation or something, wave in support. That's it.
Yeah.
That's great as well. COVID has put a real damper on how we do things. So if you want to testify before the Senate, you have to go across the street to the Florida State Tucker Center, the Civic Center, and go and speak from a room there, which is like now a disembodied voice speaking to senators. So you don't get you don't have backstage.
You don't get to stare in the eyes, right?
I prefer that. But in the House, it's a little bit different. And mind you,
evaluate your prey. Always evaluate your prey.
Oh, always. But with the House, and this could change. This is still committee week. Things could change after inauguration and whatnot. But you have to sign up to speak about a bill online beforehand, and then be there 2 hours early. And you may not get through, because I know of at least one lobbyist that they were not going to let through. She had the ticket that said she was allowed to speak, and they had to bring in like extra security guards to escort her to another room. So it's still very difficult. I was hoping that there would be a way for people from all over the state to maybe like call in or like, Zoom in to a session.
That would be smart.
Testimony. I can imagine the security,
especially since we've learned that actually does work.
It works great.
Everyone is communicating online. Everyone is communicating, having their meetings via Zoom and seeing family members via Zoom. And
several of our local here in Polk, several of our city government organizations have their board meetings are all virtual, and you can sign up to speak online and join that way. It's the technology is there. It makes sense, but.
I mean, I can't imagine security might be an issue with the state government. Maybe I don't know. But I mean, Florida's game is suppression and oppression. Right. So
let me go back then to that point of again how difficult we make it for people to be engaged in the process. If we're wanting to get more people engaged, which we are, is there a good way to? And this is just me talking out loud. Maybe this should be in our meeting. When we need people to show up to speak on a particular bill, as Joe citizen, you've got all this other stuff going on in your life. It's hard to keep tabs on all of that stuff. And so I see that's sort of where I see that as an opportunity for something like our advocacy team to, have that stuff in a tracker on the hopper so that this is a place I can go and see specifically what's going on without having to wade through all of the other things that that may not be bills that are necessarily on my mind to get involved in. But it's just that like I wouldn't, as someone, and that's the other thing. Florida is huge, and we're like a 4-hour drive from you. So for me to come up to the Capitol to speak. Yes, the technology option is the smart one, but if we're not going to do that,
we've got to figure out a way to maybe make that a little easier on people, at least so that they know, hey, here's an opportunity. This bill is going to be before this committee on this day and time. If you're interested in coming and speaking, here are the information that you need to know to connect with us, to get you there and get you into the right place, that sort of thing. I think would be super helpful.
Yeah, I think we need to develop like a how-to guide for Joe Schmo.
Yep.
And then just like make concise little like snippets, like this is what's important, and this is what we need to push for, and this is what you can do with in your community. Yep. So yeah. But as far as action items, everything's up in the air at the moment. So it's really hard to say beyond doing the action alerts, calling your senators, emailing. I'm hesitant to say anything about like prepare to testify or come visit Tallahassee to testify, because we just don't know what's going to happen. Yep. I may not even make it up the road. So,
and I would recommend, when in those communications, when you do get the action alerts with the pre-formatted text, edit it.
Oh yeah.
Edit it. Go in and say, if it doesn't say, I am a non-religious constituent, add that. A lot of times I will add in, I am writing to you as an individual, as a Floridian, as a constituent of your district, but also as director of the atheist community of Polk County or whatever, right? That I'm involved with an organization that represents a number of people who are concerned or in support of this particular legislation. Like a lot of times I'll add that in too, just as, from where I sit. But yeah, personalize it a little bit. Again, they're not going to read all of them. A lot of times the legislators not reading them at all, right? It's the aides that are reading and collecting.
They're tabulating and saying this is how it shakes out.
But the differentiator to some of those, and I think this is your let's get in the car and drive to Tallahassee moment, is when one of these bills comes up. If you have an impactful, meaningful story to tell about how your life has been impacted by whatever it is that's being considered, that's what changes the hearts and minds of people when you can go and speak and not just say, hey, I'm opposed to this because I don't believe in it or because I believe this. But if you can come and say, this is a thing that I went through in my life and this is how it has really impacted me, and you passing this legislation is going to, create this problem for future generations, or however, however the pieces line up, storytelling sells in just about every possible arena. And so
always.
Yeah. So if one of these bills, if you're looking at these, you're a Floridian, you're looking at some of these bills and you think, gosh, I have something that I could say that I think, that people really need to hear beyond just a letter of yay or nay, let us know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totes and goats. Yeah.
For sure. All right. Is that, what else is that as far as the action items? I think we've covered the specifics of like, do the action alerts, contact your legislators, come to Tallahassee when we're ready to come to Tallahassee, that sort of thing. But also maybe I would end with, try these conversations out in person, try to, engage with people, out in your community. Again, until I got involved in this community activist organizing stuff, I really wasn't having a lot of those conversations. I had conversations at work that we probably shouldn't have sometimes, but to just be connected with people in the community. Again, I'm busy, I'm working, I don't have time to know people and do things. But now that we're doing this food pantry thing, and that has connected us with so many different organizations, and they all come from different perspectives, and so there's doors that have opened up of lines of communication with people that I wouldn't normally have had the opportunity to talk to about things. And so I think about that often, don't be a dick on the internet. Like, let's try to be a positive force out in the world, and have conversations with people who are reasonable enough to have them.
And the other thing I think that one might want to do when approaching a state rep, a federal rep, whomever, is not only if I approach someone, I approach it. Not only is it me, Deborah. I'm a citizen. I live in Orlando, or I live in Florida, what have you. But I'm more than that. I am someone who is low vision, so I have concerns about those needs, and I'm locked in with a community that represents people with disabilities. Mm-hmm. Never be afraid to let your profile be more than just you. It's okay to tell, it's not only okay, it's good to let your representative know that not only are you speaking with me and giving that information to me or advocating for me, you're advocating for people like me that I'm in contact with. Let them know that you're not an island, that we communicate. Yep. And I think that's important.
Yep.
Awesome. Devin, final words, and then we'll wrap it up. You got anything else?
I don't. Just get out there, get involved. If you have any questions, you can contact me or Sarah about any of the advocacy work we're going to be doing this year. My opinions don't reflect that of my employer.
If people want to follow you, do you want them to, and where should they do that?
They probably shouldn't. But I'm on Twitter at DLGPHD. And that's
cool.
That's that. I don't have that much going on.
Awesome. Deborah, any parting thoughts?
Devin, I thank you for your time, for your effort. I thank you for packaging it so concisely so that I could put it on my tablet and read it. That was really great. Sarah, it's been delightful, and I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you.
Awesome. Well,
if anyone wants to find me, I'm on Facebook, yes. Deborah Smith. Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm there.
Well, we're definitely again, the idea here is to bring some more voices in, and so these are some voices that you'll hear more from, hopefully, as we go ahead and mix things up here on the show, and hopefully it won't be me hosting every time. That we can sort of get some other faces. I'd love to just turn my camera off and produce. It would have been a whole lot easier to manage all that audio shit at the beginning if I were just at the front end, if I were just producing. But I do want to say thank you to both of you for being with us today, and for the work that we're all doing out there in the community to try to make a difference and protect the separation of church and state here, particularly at the state level. And so we'll do it again. We'll catch up and see where things are, maybe a month down the road, and see where some of these bills that we discussed, and again, there'll be some new ones, and then we'll go from there. So thank you both for being here, for doing it.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks, Sarah.
Now let me see if I can finish up the show here. This is all new software, and so this is all new software, and so I appreciate you all hanging with us today as we try to get all of this figured out. It's been quite the experiment. I think maybe we've almost got it figured out. I think I almost know what I'm doing now. And again, hopefully it'll be easier when I'm not the only one piloting the ship. If I can just sit back and be a producer for a change, that'll be great. I do want to let you know, we want to thank our patrons for supporting the show. This new software costs a lot of money, and it's because of the patrons that we were able to purchase the license for it. And so if you want to be one of those folks who help support the show, you can go to patreon.com/PolkAtheists. If you're in a position to donate, that's great. If not, you can also share out the episodes to folks you think would like them. Rate and review, give us all the stars, all those things. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and there's also an audio podcast version of the show as well. And you can find the subscribe links at polkatheists.org. You can find all about the ACPC and make a donation too at polkatheists.org, and follow us at polkatheists on all the social medias. And as always, the 3 most important things. Don't touch anything, wash your hands, and wear your mask. And we'll see you on the next Freethought in Florida.